The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the quiet street, when a group of officers cornered an elderly black man. Their voices were sharp, their movements aggressive, but he did nothing to provoke them. Passers-by froze, unsure whether to intervene or flee. Tension crackled in the air like a storm about to break. Every second felt heavier, every breath more urgent. Then, as the officer's hands tightened around him, the old man lifted his head, his gaze steady and unwavering. In that moment, with the world watching in stunned silence, he revealed a truth that no one could have expected. He wasn't just a man. They had just confronted the city's new chief. Before that fateful morning, the old man's life had been a quiet rhythm of resilience and dignity. In a modest neighborhood lined with aging brick buildings and flickering streetlights, he moved with a calm strength that had been honed over decades of navigating a world that too often underestimated him. His days were spent helping neighbors, mentoring local youth, and quietly advocating for fairness in small, unnoticed ways. People knew him as reliable, wise, and gentle, but few knew the battles he had fought behind closed doors, battles shaped by prejudice, systemic bias, and the weight of a lifetime of overlooked contributions. He had seen the harshest sides of life, denied opportunities, shouted down in rooms where his presence should have commanded respect, and dismissed simply because of the color of his skin. Yet he carried no bitterness, only a deep, simmering awareness that justice was often delayed, but never entirely lost. That morning, as he walked the streets with his usual steady pace, he felt the familiar tension in the air, a subtle shift that hinted at the storm ahead. The neighborhood was still waking, the faint hum of early traffic mingling with the distant calls of street vendors. He moved with purpose, but remained approachable, the kind of presence that could soothe worry and spark confidence. And yet, something felt different. The usual nods from familiar faces were replaced with uneasy glances, whispers trailing behind him like shadows. Little did anyone know, this unassuming man carried a power hidden beneath his calm exterior, a truth that would shatter assumptions and change the course of a day that began like any other. The day had barely begun when the first signs of confrontation emerged. Officers stationed near the neighborhood noticed him, and without reason, began following at a distance. Their eyes were sharp, their posture tense, as if anticipating wrongdoing where there was none. He continued walking calmly, but the subtle change in their behavior did not escape him. He felt it in the tightening grip of the air, the way the shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally around him, the whispered glances of neighbors who feared involvement. Then, without warning, the officers stepped forward, their voices sharp and accusatory. They demanded identification, their words clipped and demanding, their movements threatening. People who had been passing by froze, some reaching for their phones, others retreating behind cars and buildings. The old man's hands remained visible, calm, yet every eye in the street could feel the tension spiraling. The crowd's whispers turned into murmurs of outrage. Some recognized him, some did not, but all could see the sheer disproportion of force being used. The officers' assumptions were loud and public, their actions unchecked, and in those moments, the reality of systemic prejudice was on full display. Every second stretched longer than the last, the air heavy with the collective anticipation of something breaking, something irreversible. Through the chaos, he remained composed. Beneath the surface of calm, decades of experience, of confronting bias and injustice, coalesced into a quiet, unyielding force. Memories of past indignities, of doors closed and opportunities denied, flashed in his mind. But this was not a time for despair. It was a time for revelation. The officers' aggression intensified, voices rising, commands shouted over the growing crowd. For the first time, bystanders could see the subtle shift in his posture, the lift of his head, the gaze that refused to bow. There was an unspoken power in the way he carried himself, an undeniable presence that made people step back, just slightly, as if sensing that this confrontation would not end as expected. Every moment that passed heightened the suspense. Onlookers, frozen in anticipation, could feel the shift in the energy around him. What they could not yet see was that the man before them was not just a victim of circumstance, but a figure whose very presence would expose the assumptions and prejudices of those who sought to subdue him. Every second brought the inevitable climax closer, the moment where appearances would be shattered, and the truth, undeniable and powerful, would finally emerge. The crowd had grown silent, every eye fixed on the escalating scene. The officers, confident in their authority, did not realize that they were about to confront a truth far greater than they could imagine. The old man's calm had transformed into a quiet, unyielding force, a presence that commanded attention without a single word. He stood tall, his gaze unwavering, radiating a dignity and power that cut through the tension like a sharpened blade. Then, with a steady voice that carried across the street, he revealed his identity. The words fell like thunder, shattering assumptions and expectations. "I am the new chief," he declared, each syllable resonating with authority and undeniable truth. Gasps rippled through the crowd, some faces registering shock, others relief, and the officers themselves froze, their previous certainty crumbling in an instant. In that moment, time seemed to stretch. The street, once tense with fear and aggression, was suspended in disbelief. Every action, every assumption, every misjudgment was laid bare. The officers, caught in their own hubris, stepped back, their postures faltering as the realization dawned on them. They had confronted a man they believed to be powerless, yet he had always been the embodiment of power, experience, and leadership. Witnesses could hardly believe the scene unfolding before them. The old man, who had been threatened and assaulted mere moments ago, now stood as a symbol of resilience and justice. His calm, composed demeanor throughout the ordeal emphasized the stark contrast between the assumptions of authority and the reality of truth. As the echoes of the revelation settled, the street transformed. The tension that had gripped every heart now gave way to a profound sense of awe and reflection. Neighbors, once hesitant to intervene, slowly stepped forward, their eyes filled with admiration and newfound respect. The old man, who had faced unwarranted aggression and prejudice mere moments ago, now stood as a living testament to the power of dignity, resilience, and truth. The officers, still processing their mistake, lowered their heads. The incident had exposed not just their assumptions, but the broader systemic biases that permeate everyday life. In the silence that followed, it became clear to everyone watching: judgment without understanding can lead to unnecessary harm, and the courage to stand with integrity can upend even the most entrenched misconceptions. Beyond the confrontation, the impact rippled through the community. Conversations sparked among neighbors, strangers, and onlookers, all reflecting on the ways bias shapes perceptions and actions. Children, who had witnessed the ordeal, learned an unspoken lesson about justice, strength, and standing tall in the face of adversity. The old man, now recognized as both a leader and a symbol of perseverance, continued his walk, his steps calm but purposeful, each stride a reminder that true power often resides where it is least expected. This story leaves us with a vital question: how often do we judge before we understand? How frequently do we allow assumptions to dictate actions that could harm others? It challenges each of us to pause, to reflect, and to recognize the dignity inherent in every individual, regardless of age, race, or circumstance. If this story moved you, inspired reflection, or made you rethink assumptions, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and comment to spark conversation. Let's make these stories heard and ensure that lessons of empathy, justice, and understanding reach as many people as possible. Every action counts and every voice contributes to a world where dignity is never overlooked.